Courtney and welcome to my channel. In today's video, we're going to be talking about the fairly new Anastasia Beverly Hills Magic Touch Concealer. I'm also going to be touching on the cream bronzers that they came out with. In the meantime, we're going to go ahead and get into the video. So this is what the actual packaging looks like. I'm sure you guys have probably seen it by now if you're interested. I haven't heard a lot of people talk about this concealer. I was actually a big fan of the Anastasia Beverly Hills foundation. I think it's like a luminous type of situation. Should I use that today? Anyway, haven't heard a lot of people talk about it. I've been trying it out for a minute. I'm gonna discuss with you guys like the biggest issues, pros, cons, all of that stuff with this concealer for sure. So this is $29 for 0.4 ounces. Per usual, I kind of want to do a little bit of a comparison. I always typically use the Too Faced Born This Way concealer as like one of my biggest comparisons. One, because this has so much product in it and it lasts like a long time if you're only specifically using it for like concealer. This is 0.5 ounces. This one is actually $30, so it is $1 more, but you also get 0.1 ounce more, if that makes sense. This one's a little bit more on the kind of luminous creamy side. You can definitely mattify it with your powders and stuff like that, if that makes sense. And then the most recent concealer that I've reviewed that's kind of similar to what's going on here is the One Size Turn Up the Base concealer. Now this one is $25 for 0.23 ounces. The thing with this concealer though, this is a little bit more on the full coverage, thicker side of things. A little bit matte, sticky matte on my skin. Hey guys, I'm back in here. So as you guys saw, I did start doing the product details and everything like that. I did have to stop because the maintenance guy came. I had to put my mask on and a whole bunch of other stuff, so I've been going back and forth between the maintenance guy, putting on my makeup, putting on my mask, and like the end of my kids' schoolwork. So this video might be a little bit choppy. The One Size Beauty concealer, I think I was comparing it. So this is one of those concealers that is pretty thick and full coverage, so you don't need a ton of this, if that makes sense. So Too Faced Born This Way, this is a full coverage. Very, very glidey, very creamy, still very full coverage, right? This is gonna be your Anastasia right next to it, the Magic Touch Concealer. Okay, it still goes on like pretty smooth, but it's a little bit thicker to move. It's not as glidey, especially when you blend it out. You see how smooth this is when you blend out the Too Faced concealer. This one's a little bit stickier. You see what I mean? So now this is the One Size Beauty. Now this I thought was interesting. So this one is a thicker concealer, as I mentioned. So it's in between these two as far as the consistency, as far as movability. All three of them still blend out really nicely. This one's just a little bit thicker, a little stickier. This one's like really, really smooth, really, really glidey, and this is literally in between the both of them. Does that make sense? I hope that makes sense. Now the Magic Touch Concealer does come in 25 shades. I got the shade 10, which is described as medium with golden undertones. Here's the thing. This concealer is like a super duper light concealer for my skin tone. Lately I've been just liking a shade or two lighter, but still within like my skin tone realm, if that makes sense. So this isn't necessarily a shade I would go for. However, the next shade I could have used would be shade 16, which is described as medium to 10 with warm undertones. Less golden, of course. I like a golden undertone, golden warm if I can really get into it. That one does have a warm undertone. However, for me, it would have worked well to like spot conceal, but not necessarily to highlight and brighten under the eyes. So I went with shade 10. I use a Sacha Buttercup setting powder. This works really, really well on deeper skin tones. I like to use it to nullify really, really bright concealers and just bring it down a little bit. And as you can see, everything looks a little bit more put together than what I'm gonna show you later. We're gonna roll clip. You're gonna essentially see me put on the concealer on one side. It's super full coverage when you put it on. I do like the one and done coverage kind of situation. However, this is a concealer that I feel under my eyes. It's a little bit heavier than I think most concealers that I've used. It's definitely heavier than the One Size Beauty, and this one is a pretty thick one as well. It does blend out really, really nicely. I do feel like this is a concealer that's almost a little stick and move. I know some people like to kind of sit with their concealer and kind of let it almost dry down so that when they blend it out, they have the coverage stuck where they need it. I'm not one of those people necessarily, simply because I have dry under eyes, and anything too sticky, anything too stay put on my face can can look very patchy, very cakey, very just dry, so I don't actually like doing that under my eyes. But this is one of those that, like I said, it does tend to stick a little bit leaving it too long, but it does blend out nicely once you really like get in there. The powder does go on really nice. As I mentioned, I use the Sacha Buttercup powder, and it does look really good, really smooth, really full coverage. I would recommend, if you're gonna try to build it a little bit more, to go ahead, blend it out, and then tap where you need it, and then blend that in again, if that makes sense. It's definitely a concealer you don't want to go in with too much too soon. It's gonna feel really heavy, and then the blend is gonna be a little bit cakier. This is a concealer that your powder is everything. I've used the Too Faced Peach Perfect powder, which is one of my favorite powders, and while I do think it looks good, it does leave a little bit of a cast. Again, this is a brighter concealer, and I'm using a very translucent, very thin powder, so it doesn't nullify the color as much as I would like, but it still blends it out really nicely. It still smooths everything out. It still looks really well put together. You definitely want to make sure you do an even coat of powder. Because this is sticky, your powder on top of it may stick in certain areas, so you want to make sure you smooth the concealer out and then smooth out your powder on top of it so you get a smooth, even canvas. This is a concealer you definitely have to take your time with when you're doing your makeup. If you're kind of just trying to put something on and go and it's gonna work every time and you're not gonna crease, definitely the Too Faced concealer is for that. Nice and creamy, nice and easy. Every powder you put it with is gonna be smooth, and even if it's not like the perfect kind of application, you're not gonna catch those flaws as much as you will with this Anastasia Magic Touch Concealer. For me, the Sacha Buttercup and the Too Faced Peach Perfect are the only two in my entire collection that I like the way that this looks, and I don't have as bad of creasing. This concealer creates some of the worst creasing I've had with concealers lately. I'm not gonna say of all time, because I've had some pretty sucky concealers, but it is a concealer that will crease. Again, it depends on your powder. My favorite way of applying this, and I'm gonna show you this, is using the Nars Soft Matte Complete Concealer. I like to put that one down as my base first, and once I blend that out, I like to go in with the Anastasia concealer in number 10 and just kind of dab. So I'm really not using it as a full-fledged concealer, but I am using it for a little bit more coverage where I have the most issue, which is right here, but I'm also using it as that brightener, so everything else looks a little bit more put together to me. So it says that it is a medium to full coverage, creamy and lightweight formula that corrects, brightens, blurs, and conceals while blending to a natural second skin finish. So it's definitely not lightweight. We already discussed that. Medium to full coverage, I do actually agree with. Brightens, blurs, conceals. I do think it does that with the right powder, especially the blurring aspect. With the wrong powder, it definitely looks dry, cakey, and all of that stuff. Let's get into the cream bronzers really quick before we get out of here. The cream bronzers are $35. They come in 7 shades. I got the shade Hazelnut. So the shade before this one would have been Caramel, and that one was gonna be way too light to actually show up on my skin tone. I do think it blends beautifully. I do think you can use a sponge or a brush and it still comes out flawless. But one thing that I noticed with this bronzer is it does tend to turn gray on my cheeks when touched with any color powder. I went in on one day and I did my eyes first and then went in with the bronzer, and I could see that gray kind of almost like dirty look to the skin, and I really can't stand that. So today I went in with my bronzer first and then did my concealer and my powder and did everything, but on top of it I went over it with my colored Raine bronzer. So when I went in with this one, it adds like that kind of hint of tanness and redness back instead of it being gray and like contour almost. This is a $35 cream bronzer, and usually I don't mind things being a little bit more expensive, but I shouldn't have to tweak it if it's gonna be pricier. I have a ton of cream bronzers that are less pricey, that hold their color no matter what concealer, what powder, what combination you're using with it. I am gonna keep using this probably as a base to like my colored Raine bronzers or something else. I just know I'm not gonna repurchase it, and I would not recommend something to you guys that I wouldn't consistently buy, if that makes sense. I did have several bad makeup days with this and this together. I like makeup that is tried and true. I like things that even on a bad makeup day, I can still feel confident, feel pretty, you know what I mean? This is one of those concealers that at its worst, it's bad. And when it sinks into those lines and those crevices, I look extra tired, extra old. I cannot recommend this. Everything that I talked about in this video, every makeup look, all of that is gonna be in the description box below if you are curious. That about does it for me, guys. Hopefully this video was helpful, informative, fun to watch, all that great stuff. If so, please give me a thumbs up. Be sure to like, comment, subscribe, share the video if it's in your heart to do so. And I will see you guys in the next one. Bye.